Okay, so we're just going to have a quick look at how we approach defrosting our training car to make sure it's safe to drive and safe to see out. We're actually parked at home today, so it's relatively easy to get a jug of just lightly warm water, just fractionally above sort of room temperature, not boiling water. Now the key thing we need to do, you can see here, the wipers are frozen quite solid to the screen, and so if we were to switch on the wiper motors by mistake, those powerful motors would turn the wipers and do damage either to the rubber wiper blade or to the wiper arm or the powerful motor itself. So all we're going to do is focus on releasing the wiper arms from the screen, just very carefully then lifting that up. And we'll do the same this side. And as you can see, the rest of the screen is beginning to melt. It's not actually that cold this morning. Well, it has been, but it's now about 11 o'clock, so the car's had a chance to start thawing out. As you can see immediately, it will begin to thaw. So simply using some water will very rapidly clear your screen for you. But just make sure the wiper blades don't then refreeze, and again avoid large chunks of ice and snow getting piled up in this area to block heater intakes and that type of thing. So we'll just grab another jug of water and finish that off. The other thing to remember is that you have a wiper on the back of your car as well. So really important just to check that is free moving as well and free of ice. Many modern cars, if you have your front wiper selected, as soon as you select reverse gear, the rear wiper will come on automatically. So always make sure you release both. Another good tip, if it's just like it is now, quite slushy or snow itself, is just use a very soft household brush to remove the excess. That saves your hands from getting too cold, and also avoids doing any damage. Just so make sure it's a soft brush, it's not going to scratch anything. That's a good way just to get any snow and ice off. Similarly, we want to clear our lights, so it's see and be seen, and just get the grille clear. Obviously cooling doesn't seem that important in cold weather, but you do need an airflow through your engine, so make sure that is all clear. Similarly, any large chunks of ice on the roof of the car or on the bonnet or the boot, make sure that's removed, because if that flies off and hits somebody, it can do very serious damage. So very rapidly the screen has been cleared. If we hadn't been at our home environment, if we'd come out and would have been at work or away for the day, then having a bottle of de-icer within your car is quite handy. Again, we try to minimise the use of chemicals for environmental reasons, but certainly just focusing your attention on releasing the wiper blades will be quite helpful. Then we need to get into the car itself. Now, if for any reason, I'm not expecting this one will be jammed, but if for any reason this door was jammed, it does help if you unlock it first. But if for any reason the door was jammed, it's always worth trying the door on the other side. So often when a frost comes down, it will be harsher on one side of the car, and if you're protected by another vehicle or a house, then it may be worth trying to go around the other side of the car and getting in that way, rather than trying to force your door. If all of the doors were proving quite challenging, then again just some tepid water poured over it would be quite helpful. So once inside the car, first thing we want to do is get the engine running to get some heat into it. Just, release the steering lock there. And just make sure the engine has had time to catch before we start applying any of the electrical motors, such as the wiper motors or the heater motors. Ideally we want all that switched off. If you start using electric heated screens, for example, before the engine's running, if you push the electric heated screen on, or indeed the wipers, you're draining stored energy from the car's battery. So the car battery, really, we only want to be using it to start the car's engine. Once the engine is running, as it is now, there's a belt driven alternator which is creating all the electricity we need. So now when we come to use the windscreen wipers and electric heated screens, it's the engine and the alternator that's generating that electricity, not the battery. So it's really important at this time of year we keep our batteries fully topped up as we can. So this morning it wasn't too bad. So having released the windscreen wipers, we can now simply set them going to clear the screen. And similarly with our back screen, you can see in the mirror there, that's nice and free. But as I say, if we hadn't freed the back wiper and made sure it was not frozen to the screen once we went to select reverse gear, that could have caused us some problems and could have snapped the wiper arm or the wiper rubber. It's then important to be very familiar with your own car's heater controls. And there is a balance between, obviously we've got into a car and the outside temperature is quite cold. So again, if you see the dashboard warning light, it's actually up to 1 degree, positive 1 degree. But you can see the ice warning is still showing there on the dashboard as a reminder, because what you've got to remember is whilst water freezes at 0 degrees and below, the temperature being recorded here is the air temperature. So road temperatures will be several degrees lower than that, so certainly below freezing. So there is a very serious potential for ice, so just need to be aware of that. But what we've also got to remember is that we have got into a cold car and we are exhaling warm air from our breathing process, and so the more people in the car, the more it's likely to mist up. So we're just trying to balance those two temperatures. Now if we were defrosting the screen, we want to be getting some heat into it. So for example, on this Ford car, I don't know if you can see, if we point the camera up to the sky and you look through, you can see fine wires running through the screen of this front screen. And so we actually have a heated front screen, an electrically heated front screen, and most cars also will have an electrically heated rear screen. So if the ice hadn't melted as quickly as it did this morning, what we will be doing is freeing off the wiper blades first, and then using these heating devices to help melt the ice. So we can now turn those off, because we don't need them this morning. The other thing really important is to be able to see where we're going through side windows. So again, simply buzz them down. Now, more modern cars are better than older cars, but as a general rule, it's best to do one window at a time. Again, we're trying to avoid overloading electrical circuits and running any risk of blowing fuses or circuit breakers. So if you buzz all 4 windows down in one go, it could put a load on the electrical system. So again, just be cautious, do it one window at a time, but firstly check that the windows have been freed. Now we've allowed the car to run. Now once all visibility is improved and you're confident you can see, getting the car moving as quickly as possible is the best advice. It heats up more rapidly than just idling it here, so it's better again for the environment and to get things moving. But you must be very careful that, as we said, hot breath doesn't condense on the windows, so make sure you've given it time and are using your heater controls. The other thing that's a little bit counterintuitive, may seem, is to be using your air conditioning. So air conditioning isn't just for cooling air in summertime, it also dries the air that's coming in from outside, so it's very important to be using air conditioning controls. Start off with a moderate heat, don't put it onto maximum. So we're trying to balance the temperatures, so if you put it onto a maximum heat straight off, you're likely to be getting things condensing inside the car. So get the car moving, get the air balanced, temperatures balanced, and then gradually increase the temperature. And the other thing finally to remember is obviously we've demisted, defrosted so that we can see other people. It's really important that they can see us. So on these darker winter mornings, really important that you've got your dipped headlights on, which are also showing red lights to the rear. So if you remember daytime running lights, the very bright LED lights that are on the front of the car, often on most cars won't be showing red lights to the back of the car. So at this time of year, dark overcast mornings, it's very much a case of see and be seen. The other thing, again, just to point out in terms of footwear, very, very sensible at this time of year to keep a set of sort of stout walking boots and a warm jacket and some gloves and hats in the boot of your car. However, big boots are not really the best things to be driving with in terms of the risk of pressing pedals at the same time. Brake there, we're not into heel and toe, but so you really want to be having a set of dry driving shoes. And if your shoes do get wet, so if I've just come out and my shoes are slippery, rub them on the mat, dry them off first, and then you want some narrow driving shoes. Clearly, if it's snowy and you need to get out and walk somewhere, we'll just slip your boots on, but then have a sensible set of driving shoes. So that really covers the key things of defrosting and demisting to ensure your car is safe to drive. The other thing just to mention when we're just sitting here giving the car a few minutes just to warm through is, for both safety and security reasons, never be tempted to leave the car unattended with its engine running. So yeah, pop back into the house and have a cup of coffee or something like that is really not a good idea. You shouldn't leave obviously a running car unattended, and for basic safety purposes, for everybody else's safety, but also from a security perspective, it's quite a common, so common it's got a term attached to it. Opportunistic theft is known as frosting. So when people are defrosting their cars, as I say, they typically pop back in, make themselves a coffee and sit in the warm of their home while the car is running, and then an opportunistic thief will walk past and jump in the car. And I've actually seen that happen to a neighbour of mine when I lived up towards London. So you know, I've seen it firsthand. It does happen, and it was very unfortunate for an old chap who relied on his car. And in that instance, it was just some young lads who thought it would be rather amusing to go and take his car. So learn from that. Your insurance company is highly unlikely to pay out in the case of a theft where the keys were left in your vehicle. So it's an easy mistake to make. And the other hopefully obvious thing, just to point out, obviously, if there's been frost on the screen when you got into your car, it's highly likely there's going to be ice on the road. So it is make that observation link. It's clearly not rocket science, but the danger is we all get into our nice modern cars and it will have been cold outside. We jump in, we'll sit here for a couple of minutes and the car very rapidly warms through. It's very easy to forget that you've just scraped snow and ice off your car. And as I say, so make the observation link. If there was frost on your windscreen, highly likely that there will be ice on the road. So we should be driving accordingly and anticipating that very real hazard. Okay, so as you can hear, the wiper rubbers have gone very cold, and so we're making a squeaking noise on the windscreen. That's because the rubber has gone cold and reasonably brittle. The same will be true of our car tyres. So the tyres on this car are summer use tyres, and once you get below anything around positive 5 degrees C, so we're not talking -5, we're talking positive 5 degrees C, anything below that sort of figure, and the car's tyres are not as supple and as grippy as they would be. So today the dashboard is showing an air temperature of 1 degree, and the ice warning is up, and so those tyres and the road temperature will be down, well, below 1 degree, so it'll be probably below 0. So we've got to be mindful of the fact that the roads could be a little bit icy, and we're going to approach our drive this morning accordingly. It is an essential drive, and conditions are not so severe that we should be avoiding the drive. So I'm just going to set off now. Dusting of snow as soon as it's hitting the wet road surface is melting. So at the moment the conditions are not much different to a normal rainy day, other than, as we said, we're just going to be mindful that the road temperatures mean that potentially there could be patches of ice where the water has frozen. We're keeping all of our inputs extra smooth this morning, so we're reliant on the tyres' grip, as we've said, and those tyres are operating slightly below their optimum preferred operating temperatures. So the three things we rely on for our tyres to do is to steer the car, so any inputs through the steering wheel must be nice and smooth. We also rely on the tyres' grip to brake the car and slow the car under braking. So by looking well ahead and planning when we need to slow the car, by just coming off the gas pedal earlier in the first instance and allowing the car to slow naturally with a bit of engine retardation is preferable, before then bringing the brakes in, but again bringing our brakes in over a much greater distance, certainly avoiding any harsh braking. And the third thing we require our tyres to do for us is to grip the road when we're accelerating the car, and so again we are very gentle with any inputs on the gas pedal. On the cold wet roads, when you can quite easily spin the wheels by being harsh with your accelerator or gas pedal. And the other thing we try to do is we try to separate out those three activities, so we're only ever asking the tyres to do one of those things at one time. So if we're looking for the car to change direction through steering, we try to avoid doing any braking or any accelerating or any firm acceleration at that same time. So the tyres grip is only being asked to do one function. Do need to reduce speed using the brakes, for example. We would try, wherever possible, to do that in a straight line before we then got to a bend and asked the car to turn using the steering input. That's the key principle there. Relatively gentle bend, but just eased off the gas pedal on approach. Very lightest touch of the brake pedal before moving the car forward. A lot of trees have been felled in the storm, as we can see there, so potential for there to be some debris in the road. And as we said, the squeaking from the wiper blade that you can hear is purely because those blades have been frozen and are cold. The rubber compound has hardened. It's not that these are old wiper blades. Normally on a warm day they would be operating quite smoothly. We've also got the air conditioning running, so we've got the temperature now set, the heater control temperature set to a mid warm setting, but the air conditioning unit is drying the air that's being brought into the car. So we don't have recirculation on, we just have normal air being drawn into the car as normal, but it's being brought in through the air conditioning unit, which will dry it. So we've got the cyclist here, so again we don't want to meet them at the pinch point. Keeping well back, bearing in mind they are on very narrow and slippery tyres. And the hatched area next to them is actually going to be unswept. So I'm just checking my mirrors. And as we can see, you've got a layer of snow in the unswept hatched area. So today I don't think it is necessary to enter that area. So I'm holding back. The cyclist is doing less than 10 miles an hour, so now is the moment to get on and pass them. But as you can see again, this is a bounded hatched area, the other one wasn't. But what you've got to notice is that obviously the tyre tracks of cars running down the normal section of road will clear it and will have melted any ice. That hatched area, most people wouldn't be entering it, so that's just the sort of situation on a morning like this where you could put your tyres on that when you're passing the cyclist and find the car going a little bit sideways. So caution is key in that situation. Looking ahead now, we've got a green light at the crossroads. That could well change, so again a morning when you certainly don't want to be racing towards the lights. Scanning the crossroads for anyone else who's coming through. So we intend to turn left just before at the traffic lights. So mirrors, signal, off the gas, positioning to the left. Very light gas and very smooth steering inputs. You don't want to be doing sliding into the cars waiting there. Checking the mirrors. Now the wheels are straight, we can gently, smoothly pick the gas up. The cyclists are a long way back on the cycle path, that's good separation. Got the warning for the crossroads, or the junction rather, and our intention is to turn right into that junction. So I'm checking my mirrors and putting a very early signal on. So this is mirrors signal. Position to the centre line. I'm already in the speed phase. By coming off the gas, I'm letting the speed drop out naturally. Finally, just using the brakes very, very gently. clutch goes down. Take the gear, checking the right hand mirror as we look into the lane. Just check that lane. This is a quiet lane, so potential for ice where cars haven't driven along here, but it seems fine at the moment. Okay, so there's quite a heavy frost forecast for this evening. So just as a bit of an experiment, we've got Mr. Rusty out of the garage and parked him on the driveway alongside the training car. But we've covered him with a car cover, as you can see. And so we thought we'd have a look and see how effective these car covers are at keeping frost off a car and making it easy rather than needing to defrost it in the morning, as we will the training car. Just see how easy it is then to get in and drive the car. Obviously this is a full-size car cover that covers the whole of the car. There are various bonnets that cover just the glass area of cars, or alternatively you can get similar foil type screens that tuck under the windscreen wipers and keep the screens frost free. Some of the drawbacks I've found with these type of covers is if it's been raining, obviously you get very wet removing them yourself, so you've got to offset the time saving of getting your clothes wet with the time you could have been just defrosting the car normally. And also if you get high winds overnight, obviously those sort of car covers can balloon and the wind can get up underneath them, and can actually be quite detrimental to the car. It can scratch the car if the fixings start to rub or get pulled in high winds. So fine for longer term storage if the car isn't going to be in a high wind area, but on a daily basis it's probably not the easiest solution, but we will see how effective it is in the morning. We'll come back and see it when the frost has settled. Okay, so just as was forecast, we've had a very heavy frost overnight, probably the harshest frost we've had here on the south coast in winter 2020-21. So what it highlights is, if you are weather aware and you watch the weather forecast and the yellow weather warning for frost we had last evening, it can help you plan your next morning. Set your alarm 15 minutes early just to give yourself time to get your car defrosted. First thing we're going to do, as you know, last evening we put Mr. Rusty under his cover, so we'll just take that off and see how effective this type of cover has been at keeping the frost off. As you can see, there's a good coating of frost over the cover itself. The cover. So as we can see, that's been very effective keeping the frost off the car. It will be ready to start now. You can already see a little bit of condensation occurring. The change in temperature there on the back screen, but very quickly, if we've got a heater running inside, that would demist, just buzz the windows down, let some cold air in initially, put the heated rear screen on and the engine heater, and that would very quickly warm through. So it is quite effective at keeping the frost off, as you can see. Okay, so now we'll have a look at the training car, and as we can see, that is quite significantly frosted up and the wipers are quite firmly stuck to the screen. As we've looked at earlier in the video, a jug of tepid water would be very effective at releasing the wiper blades, but today we'll assume we were away from our home address and that wasn't convenient. We'll just use a little bit of spray de-icer to gently free off the wiper blades and make sure they're not frozen to the screen. And then it's also very important, as we said last time, just to make sure we release the rear wiper as well. So we'll go into the back of the car. A second to work, and then we can put some here on the lights. And then we're going to get into the car and have a look at the features available. So as we said, we're trying to minimise the use of chemicals, but so we've released the rubbers, the windscreen wipers rubbers, so we're not going to do any damage there, and we're checking that all of our electrical components, all of our wipers are switched off before we start the car. So the engine is now warming and the electricity is being generated by the alternator, not the car's battery. Important thing just to understand, if you look at the dashboard here, you can see this is the temperature gauge for your engine, and as you can see the little blue arrow is currently well and truly on its stop, so there's no heat in the engine at all. And so the first thing the engine will do is warm the engine itself before the thermostat opens and allows the heating coolant to come through into our heater system. So it's just important to understand that initially when you start the engine, these heater controls, once you can put them to the hot position, there is nothing hot, there is no hot water to come through and heat your screen. So be aware it just takes until the needle has risen on the engine. You won't be getting much heat through that. However, most cars will have the benefit of an electric heated rear screen. Now this is electrically operated, it's thin wires through the back screen. But as we said, it's really important that your engine is running before you switch that on, because it takes a lot of electrical energy. And on this Ford car, we also have the windscreen also has these thin wires in it. So if we push that front screen, we now have electrical heating elements in that front screen. So if we just keep an eye on the screen, we'll get some indication of how long this takes. I won't put a stopwatch on it. We can take the timings from the video code later, but we can just now let that start to gently thaw through, and we'll just see how long that takes. Already you can see the screen is quite effective. I hope you can see that with the lighting, that the frost is already cracking quite effectively. Now we don't really want the wiper rubber blades to be scraping over hard chunks and peaks of solid ice, because that would obviously have the potential to do damage to those wiper blades. So give it plenty of time, but as you can see, in a matter of seconds, I mean that's probably less than a minute, I would imagine, we've been sitting here talking, and you can hopefully see the ice is running down the screen. So the heated front screen, and there are a lot of gimmicks on modern cars which are there for the sake of the designers and the marketing people, but I have to say this is one innovation which is incredibly convenient on certainly this modern Ford, and a number of other car models now have this feature. So now I think it'd be reasonably safe for us to put our wipers on and have a clear screen. So the other thing we'll notice now is our side windows, and they are still frosted, and as we said in the last section of the video, highly likely they will be frozen shut. Yep, and I don't know if you can hear that just clicking, but I'm pushing the electric button and the window isn't moving, and similarly nor is my driver's one. So this is why it's so important just to try this very carefully and try it with one window at a time, rather than trying to attempt to buzz them all down at once and risk blowing a fuse. So I'm now going to have to get out just with a bit of de-icer and free that off with some chemical de-icer. Okay, so as I said, at our home address we'd normally do that with just some tepid water, but let's see. But no, even now, no, yeah, we just freed it off. There we go, you can hear it cracking. But if it's not necessary, clearly we could have wiped that off with a cloth. So if the windows are stuck and there's no need to lower them, it's probably preferable just to let it thaw out naturally once the car is driving, but certainly use some either tepid water or some chemical de-icer as we demonstrated there, just to get it clear so you've got your vision, and then maybe attempt to close the windows down later once the car has warmed through from inside. Also check, most side mirrors on most cars will have a heating element of some description. On older cars won't, so you'd have to chemically de-ice those or put some tepid water over it and wipe it off. Most modern cars will have a heating element. Some operate when you turn your rear screen on, so typically it work in combination with that. So when you're turning the rear screen on, you're also turning the heater elements on for your side mirrors. And if you have a look at the dashboard temperature gauge now, you can just see that the little blue needle has just moved off its bottom stop and is gradually moving to the center position. What will generally happen, you'll get no movement at all for a couple of minutes, and then all of a sudden it will rise to temperature, and what's happening there is the thermostat is opening and allowing water to flow through the heater vents within the car. So it's initially it just focuses its attention on warming the engine through, and then it opens the thermostat, which allows other water galleries to open and to warm the heater, and then you'll start getting heat within the car, and at which point we can then start directing our heater controls. So let's turn the rear electrical one off now. This now is just heated coolant from the engine is being blown by this electric fan, as you can probably hear, and we are directing that. It's important that you direct it at the screen. Just turn that down so we can hear what we're saying. The other thing to note, we are using air conditioning. It seems somewhat counterintuitive on a cold morning like this, but air conditioning dries the air that is being drawn into the car from the outside. But what we haven't got is the recirculation button pressed, because we want to be drawing in colder air from the outside, having dried it with the air conditioning, because cold, dense air contains less moisture than hot air, so the hot air we're breathing out from our breathing process will contain more moisture than the cold, fresh air that's being brought in from outside. So for that reason, we don't use the recirculation button. And so as you can see now, within a couple of minutes, a modern car is clean and ready to drive. Okay, so this is a winter sort of car care pack. This is actually a Volkswagen branded pack, and as you can see from the multi-languages, this is sold all around Europe and beyond, so Poland, Czechoslovakia, Finland, Russia. So this pack goes to countries where they do get some seriously cold weather, not like us on the south coast of England here. But just having a look at what they would include in that pack, we have a screen wash additive that goes in the screen wash reservoir to make sure that the screen wash jets are free and able to clear your screen so you don't get a dry wipe. That'll be the first item. They then provide you with a trigger spray of chemical de-icer, as we've been demonstrating, and they also provide you with a scraper. So, yeah, a Swedish friend of mine, obviously, who's very experienced in dealing with really cold conditions, and was explaining that in Sweden they are very anti-chemical de-icers and the damage it does to the environment. So the main focus would be on using the scraper first, but obviously you do need a small amount of chemical de-icer, as we demonstrated, just to free rubber wiper blades. And one other element contained in that pack is actually a little container of rubber care. And so pull the lid off. It's almost like a shoe cleaning type brush, and that is used as a preventative measure. So in cold conditions, the rubber car sealing rubbers here that seal and make the car waterproof by the door pressing against them. It's the door seal. By coating that with this product the night before, you reduce the risk of water getting in there and freezing and sticking, in this case the window glass, to the rubber to make it difficult to open your door. So again, it's rubber care to keep your rubber supple during these cold months, because obviously it goes hard and brittle as we've seen from the windscreen wipers, but it also makes it easier for opening doors on frosty mornings. So that, as I say, is a kit that will come from a brand such as Volkswagen. So we'll just go and have a look at using the scraper on our Volkswagen and just see how that works. Okay, so as we said, if we were parked away from our home address, we would just be using chemical deicer quite sparingly, just to release the wiper blades, and then we can use the scraper to very gently clear the frost. However, as we are at our home address, it's very easy to get a jug of just tepid water. As you can see, that is by far the simplest way to clear your windscreen. Similarly, if you pour that over the door surround, that will help to free stuck doors before getting into the car. So that is by far the simplest and most environmentally friendly way of doing it when you're parked at your home address.